Okay, so in this episode, I'm going to talk to you about murderer Tahir Malik. And this case is so rare that I could not find a single photograph of Tahir. What you see in the thumbnail is probably the closest I could find to the way he looked. Because this murder took place in the city I grew up. I even knew this guy. I knew who he was. I even know where he lived. In fact, if we went back to Slough, where this murder takes place, for those that don't know, Slough is a city just outside of London. I lived there for 23, 24 years. It is spelled Slough, and it's pronounced Slough, not Slough, as many people have said it when they first read it. Anyway, let me read you out this newspaper article just to give you context, and then I'll delve into why he committed this crime. See, the problem I have with those that kill children or those that commit murder in general, right, is that we will get reasons for why they do what they did. Yeah. I killed my wife because she was cheating on me, for example, right? But we always generally, whenever we look at cases and we look at documentaries and stuff, sometimes we're given a reason as to why people do what they do. What we never get is why. Do you know what I mean? I know that sounds weird, but if somebody decides to shoot someone else and it could be because they had a dispute, the question we never get is, so why'd you kill him? Because we had a disagreement. Okay, what was the disagreement? The disagreement was X, Y, and Z. Okay, so why'd you kill him? We killed him because we had a disagreement. Okay, but why did you feel killing them was the necessary form of action? Do you get what I mean? Right? Like we never ever get to the why. And again, I know it sounds weird, but most of the killers and criminals that we come across don't have the stomach or the courage to say why. Like if you're there and you're about to kill this child, as is the case with Tahir Malik in this story I'm about to tell you, when you're in that moment and you're about to stamp on his head, why didn't you stop? When you're in that moment and you know you could go to jail for a long time and you have absolutely no motive, because in this story the police reported that it was motiveless, when there's literally no reason, why'd you do it? We never get that coverage. We never get that courage. And I've spoken before about how criminals get away with murder, which is a great punchline, but they never are accountable for what they have to do. What I mean by that is when they die, they have to answer to God. I do believe in that, but many people don't. But irrespective of whether you believe in God or not, these people like Tahir Malik need to answer to somebody, and it shouldn't be a fucking judge. Sorry for swearing. And it shouldn't be a jury. It should be to the victims. I mean, how dare you? Anyway, let me give you more context. So um, Tahir was a disturbed teenager. He was around 17 at the time. His nickname was Wolf Boy, and he was actually convicted after murdering a 9-year-old in a park. Judge Neil Dennison ordered Tahir Malik to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure, which is basically sentenced to jail. Um, Akhlaq Ahmed, who was the young kid, he was the victim. Now they went to Salthill Park, which is a park in Slough, and Akhlaq was there with his family. His family were playing cricket; they were having fun. He was a young kid; he went to go play on the swings, which is fine, you know. And then people did see him with someone else who turned out to be Tahir Malik, and then eventually they found his body somewhere in a ditch in the park. So that's the report from the newspaper article. This took place in 1994-ish, 93, 94. And I remember the story. I remember the memories, right? I remember seeing as a young kid, because that park was right next to my house. I played in that park many times. It was massive. It's a massive park. Um, I remember seeing, the police wire, the police crossing, do not cross, crime scene or whatever. I physically have images in my head. I remember it, and every time I drive past that park, whenever I'm back in England, I always I always think of I always think about that murder, because I've always wondered who was it. Who was it? Like back then, I did. As time has gone on, I knew who it was. But back then, I like that was my first real murder exposure, or my first real memory. Anyway, So maybe there's a bit of nostalgia attached. But anyway, so um Tahir lived in on Ragston Road, right? That's the name of the road. And Slough itself is very much an immigrant base. Now I'll explain that in more detail. in my previous videos on YouTube, I explained how Tahir was a Pakistani, right? So I explained how Pakistanis got to England. Now, what happened is a lot of them went to the north of England to rebuild the country after World War II, steel factories, etc. But the ones that couldn't find work, they all went south, closer to London, because the entirety of Britain is centered around London. But imagine you're living in New York, or let's say you're living in LA, right? Or where I am in Washington DC, right? So if we take New York as the example, you have Manhattan, which is the main part, but nobody can afford to live in Manhattan because it's stupidly expensive. So what do people do? They'll go to Queens or Flushing or or Hoboken, right? I know that's in New Jersey, but actually, is it? Yes, in New Jersey, but you understand what I'm saying, right? They'll go to the surrounding area just outside and live there as it's more affordable. So, when my family moved to Slough, we couldn't live in Mayfair or Park Lane or Piccadilly or even Ealing and all these other places. So we went to Slough. Slough is actually right next to Windsor. Windsor is where the royal weddings were and the Queen's second house. I went to school in Windsor. If you've seen my videos on YouTube, you would know. So yeah, so Slough was the perfect hub to live in if you were going to try and look for work in London or surrounding London, as Slough was more affordable. And well, back then it was pretty much the ghetto, right? Whole bunch of drugs, whole bunch of prostitutes. All the Pakistanis who did move there all just became taxi drivers, as my father did. And a lot of the kids who moved from Pakistan in the 90s and in the late 80s, I went to school in Slough. All of them, because I know a bunch of them, but nearly all of them either ended up in jail, still selling drugs. The girls ended up in prostitution, and the rest of them are working. Even to this day, they're working in McDonald's or Burger King or I guess you could say the service industry. You're getting minimum wage because they just never pursued an education. As well, that's the ghetto, right? Like you don't have a purpose, you don't have a place. Now, one disadvantage of making a podcast is that there's no imagery. But if I was to show you imagery, it would give you a much better depiction of this place. So I guess all I can ask is Google it yourself, right? But if you look at Ragstone Road, so that's Ragstone, Ragstone Road, very very tight road. Like the majority of you that listen to me are in America, right? Ragstone Road is probably as wide as uh like okay, so on the highway you get one lane. That's Ragstone Road. That's the entire road, one lane, and the cars are always blocking each other. Um, and the houses are really small, semi-detached. They call it back in England. I think in America you guys call it a townhouse. Um, but everybody there is poor, generally speaking. A lot of them are on welfare. So you got Raxton Road, and then you got King Edward Street, and then you have Arthur Road. Right, these are three roads, back to back, next to each other. I spent a lot of time on Arthur Road. My grandma used to live there, so I was there a lot as a kid. There's another park near there too, and there used to be like a river and a slide and like a swing and stuff. So I know, not only do I know the area well where this murder took place, I know the very road of where the guy lived. So Tahir Malik at the time was around 17. Now his family, I actually knew his other two brothers who I played football with, soccer, quite a lot. Every Friday night at the local soccer center, we would go play. But both his brothers were in drugs too, selling drugs. And I believe their father passed away, but I can't remember when. But Tahir himself was alone. And that is the point of this story. He committed this crime out of loneliness, which makes no sense. And that's why I said in the beginning, killers get away with murder. Because I can understand you needing attention if you feel lonely. But if you felt killing was a way to get recognition, well, I'm sorry, but you need to answer for that. You need to answer to us. And I guess you could say, well, who am I? Well, I'm trying to speak on behalf of other people, right? When I say us, I'm talking about the victim's family. Like if you felt the best course of action was for you to take the life of a young boy, then you need to sit down, sir, and you need to answer for your sins. Anyway, Talik was described Talik Tahir, sorry, was described as a rather lonely man. He was disordered. He was backward. He had a low IQ, and he did have a few mental handicaps, but it was confirmed that he wasn't mentally ill. So he was a bit slow. I don't mean in a disrespectful way, but he wasn't the sharpest tool in the box. But by no means was he like if this was in America, they wouldn't consider insanity. Do you know what I mean? And the trial itself took place. It took 2 weeks, sorry, and the police confirmed that the murder was motiveless, and said that although no one saw it, there was overwhelming circumstantial evidence that Malik was the killer. So to the actual incident itself, right? So, um, Akhlaq Ahmed, I don't know his family. I'm sure if I was to ask my dad, yo, do you know the family? My dad would probably tell me who it was, and I'd be like, oh, I know that family, but I forgot to ask my dad and whatever. But I'm pretty sure the kid's family I would know. I probably know his older brothers or something like that. Because like I said, and as you can imagine, when you grow up in a city where it's full of people of your own ethnicity and all that kind of stuff, everybody generally knows everyone. It's a small world, right? So anyway, so they're in the park, and as you know, in England, cricket is massive. And in Pakistan, Akhlaq Ahmed's family, the victim's family, were all of Pakistani descent. In Pakistan, the biggest sport is cricket. It's huge. It's a summer sport. And with immigration and with empire comes culture. So whenever a lot of the Pakistanis, or when people generally travel to other countries to live and to emigrate and whatever, a lot of what they know, a lot of their culture, they bring with them, and one of that was cricket. It's normal. I'm from England, as you guys know. I live in America. I've never ever let go of my passion for football, soccer that is. So anyway, so they're in the park, and the way they were to play cricket is there's probably around 10 to 15, maybe 20 of them, right? And they would have, I'm trying to explain cricket to you without explaining cricket to you. So they would have, the bat would be the normal bat. They were obviously would have bought that from the shop, but the actual wickets, they would have probably taken a, you know, those old milk crates back in the day when the milkman, I don't know what it was like in America, but in England, the milkman used to come over and leave milk outside your door and leave it in a crate. Like, you know when you buy um Coke cans or whatever in like a 6 pack, right? So imagine that. So they would use that kind of box as the wickets on either side of the field, and then they would have people fielding, and obviously there wouldn't be a referee or whatever, and they would just be playing, right? It'd be nice fun. And a lot of the times, even today, if you were to go, you'd still see that happening where the adults are playing and the kids are generally in the vicinity, running around with each other. Now in that park, they have basketball courts, tennis courts, and it actually became a COVID site during COVID for a little while, but it's much developed now. They even have like a nice cafe over there and all that kind of stuff. But back then, it was just a field, and I think maybe a um one tennis court, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, so they were playing, and so you get the field part, and then as the field goes on, you have the swings, and then you have like a climbing frame, you have a seesaw, you have slides, perfect for the kids. I think a little sand area too. Um, like, oh my days, now thinking about it, so many memories of my childhood have come back. But the kids generally play in that area, and then the adults would be playing whatever sport they're playing in the grass area, and it's all in the vicinity. Like you can see one another, no problem, right? There wouldn't be any safety concerns whatsoever. But in this case, they were playing cricket, and then Akhlaq wandered off. He wandered away from the match to go and play on the swings, and witnesses did say he was playing in the park with Tahir Malik. So the way I envision it in my head is the parents can see Akhlaq from their eye line when they're playing cricket, and they look over, oh, he's there on the swing. I'm trying to understand why they did nothing when they saw him with Tahir. They probably thought, this is someone that we know, or because he was brown skinned, one of our own, it's fine, it's not a problem, or something like that. I don't know. But the thing is, you have to understand, right? I'm telling this story from today's point of view, whereas back then, I can only assume there was a more relaxed a reception to potential child murderers. Like today, there seems to be a child murderer every 5 minutes. Whereas back then, particularly in Slough, it was something unheard of. So, um, Tahir is playing with Akhlaq, and then as the cricket match finishes, his parents and his uncles or whatever are like, "Oh, where is he?" So they go looking for him. Akhlaq, where are you? Akhlaq, where are you? And the thing about the park itself is that there's a lot of, like, it's a huge park, right? Not a Central Park in New York style, but certainly a big enough park where to walk from one end to another would take you 15-20 minutes, right? Well, that's a pretty big park, and there's a running track around it. And it also leads to like back roads of some other, like, if you want to get from one place to another, you can go out through the back, and it's actually pretty cool, the locale of it. So they obviously went around looking for him in the park, shouting his name, and they couldn't find him. And then eventually his naked and battered body was discovered in a part of the park covered by dense undergrowth. He had actually been strangled. And in my head, I was thinking to myself, okay, why would Tahir Malik do this? Because I, I probably shouldn't say this, but I can't link notoriety to people of Pakistani descent. See, if you look at a lot of murders, the guy, what's his name, the Parkland kid, right? Cruz. I forgot his first name. The guy, Aurora shooter, right? Even the Virginia Tech shooter, a while back. They do it for attention. They do it for notoriety. This isn't a need, or this isn't something you would associate from those who come from Pakistan, because we're very hard people. We're very unemotional people. I don't mean this in a disrespectful way. I'm not trying to put the culture down. I know these people. I'm them, right? Like my father, I don't think I've ever seen my father ever compliment my mum. And if I have, it hasn't been more than 5 times in the 32, 33 years that I've known my parents, right? That's just how we are. It's very unemotional, cold, and efficient, right? The entire Pakistani way is get shit done and that's it. You know what I mean? Like you don't need to show him, like emotion is a sign of weakness, because people prey on weakness. So to say that Tahir's motivation may have been attention, or wanting people to recognize him, or notoriety, as you know, a lot of killers do, makes no sense to me, because Pakistani people are not like that. But it doesn't change that maybe loneliness is still the reason, and perhaps in some sick, twisted logic, he thought to himself in the moment. So finds Akhlaq. He then takes him down this little underpath way, and then he hits him, and then he stamps on him. He stamps on him because strangulation came at the end. So I'm thinking to myself, what caused him to hit him in the first place? Maybe he's angry that his life turned out the way it did, and he was jealous of Akhlaq. Oh, look, his parents are taking him out to the park. Imagine the parents are playing. Akhlaq is in on the swings, and Tahir is just a bystander, right? And Tahir is watching, and he's analyzing, and maybe he's feeling pain that he's seeing other people happy, and he's seen a kid have a childhood that Tahir never had. Because I'm telling you now, Tahir would never, nobody would have ever asked him, "Yo, how are you? Are you okay?" Like, I don't think anybody ever asked him that in his life, because that is not the Pakistani way. Don't get me wrong, we're very polite people. You know what I mean? We take care of our guests. We believe in taking care of your neighbor and all that jazz. But general mannerisms, right? Like when it comes to mental health and that kind of stuff, we ignore. Maybe it is a stigma, I don't know. But nobody in their right mind in Slough would have said, "Hey Tahir, how are you? How are you doing today?" Like nobody would have ever done a mental health check, or just asked how he is in general, because nobody cared. Everyone just assumed everyone's okay, and that's just how things are. So maybe Tahir felt jealous of Akhlaq and thought, "I'm not going to let you take this. Well, I am going to take away from you what was taken away from me, which was probably a very tough childhood." I don't think Tahir suffered any abuse. I don't think he was sexually abused, because they confirmed that there was no sexual, uh, there was no sexual crime committed to Akhlaq, right? And of course, even if you're not abused as a kid, you're still susceptible to committing sexual crimes. But nothing suggested that Tahir was ever abused as a kid. Maybe neglect and mental abuse. Like if he did something wrong, maybe he got told off a lot and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of physical abuse, no, he may have gotten a slap every now and again, but even I got that. But like in terms of actual sexual abuse, I don't think he experienced this as a kid. Okay, so the actual trial itself, and this is a disgrace. So as I said, Tahir committed the crime when he was 17, right? So on 28th of July 1994, he was sentenced to 9 years. See, now the rules have changed. If you commit this kind of crime and you're under 16 or 17, or if you're at that age, you got to do a minimum of 12 years. That's the minimum. That's the rules. And then they'll see. He got 9 years and he was actually released in 2003, which is a disgrace. How messed up is the system that, let's just say you have no rules on what sentences should be. You know, and I know that if you're 17 and you're killing a 9-year-old kid, you should get at least 30, 40, maybe jail for life, because you have no place in society. You have no purpose in society. Don't nobody want to know you. Don't nobody care about you. Nobody wants to ever see your face ever again. But he got 9 years. I don't know what's happened to Tahir since, but my guess is either he passed away through a drug overdose, because like I said, his family were drug dealers. And imagine now he's at the age of 24, 25 in 2003, right? And the internet age is here. Everybody, or not everybody, but everybody of his peers are now living a far more luxurious life than what they did when he then the mid 90s, right? So everyone is going out, everyone can communicate, guys are meeting girls more frequently, where kids are getting access to technology at a younger age. He's there with a cabbage brain, the brain of a child, completely alone, just spent a big portion of his life in jail, never going to find a proper job. He's probably going to have to work in Asda or Walmart or something like that, or even McDonald's for the rest of his life. Maybe the only solution for him was suicide, which is a horrible thing to say, I know. But what purpose does he have left? We don't want him. We all believe he should be back in jail. Because for me, jail is not a form of rehabilitation. It's never worked, but that's a different discussion. Either way, regardless of what you think on what should happen to Tahir in terms of actual punishment, this was a senseless, stupid crime that should never have taken place. And it just goes to show the importance of attention. It goes to show the importance of just asking someone, hey, you okay? Hey, how you doing, mate? And just talking to them. And I must admit, I had the same upbringing. Nobody ever asked how I was. Nobody ever cared about how I felt. But I guess I was lucky and fortunate enough to have the foresight that, hey, if you want to make it in life, you got to do it yourself. Nobody's going to give it to you. And I guess the biggest thing for me, because you're gonna the reason why I always bring it back to me in a lot of my videos is because I can only speak for myself, but I feel like with a lot of these cases, especially in the UK, I can relate. I grew up there, I know the environment, and I think that the biggest thing I learned fast was failing is success. There is no progress without failure. You don't get somewhere in life unless you failed a few times, and trial and error, right? That's how you become a man. That's how you grow, or even a woman. Sorry, that's how you grow. That's how you learn to be an upstanding, supportive member of society. And in the case of Tahir, he just didn't have those basic functioning skills because nobody cared. Nobody cared on his well-being, and look at where it resulted. But yeah, so thank you guys for listening. I hope this was fun, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.